It's Judah and Joshua. We are here. We're going to talk about manhood. No, yes, brotherhood. Brotherhood, which is a little different. But let's hit
It
the
involves men,
old, huh?
right? It involves
Yeah,
men, but it's like
yeah.
a particular relationship between men.
Amen. Let's hit the old intro.
This is not a show and might not even be a connection. Here's Judah and guest.
See, what I do is I tease them a little bit, hit the intro to give us some time for people to show up. Nobody does. So today I want to talk about
We are
brotherhood. I
recording
think
for posterity.
yes, I want to
Coming
talk
to you
about this
live.
because it's something that's been on my brain for a long time. I worked for the Mankind Project, doing the Becoming a Man project with Chicago Public School System, and then we also talked about it. Me and you talked a little bit about it. As we were having some man time out in the woods, just chilling and doing our thing, and I think it's an interesting subject. How has it changed? How does brotherhood fit into scripture and the church? But before we talk about that, I did want to say I got some really good responses from Jim Pass. He's an oft responder and commenter on our videos. And he was I haven't had his permission yet to share what he shared with me. I think it's really good about masks. But I do want to tease that a little bit until I get his permission. I'm not going to share. But some really interesting and kind of funny stuff that he shared about masks. So maybe next time, or unless he comes on now and says, "Hey, yeah, share that,"
We'll talk about masks.
Yeah, but in the meantime,
They're all the
brotherhood,
rage.
manhood, brotherhood, and see that's why I brought up the idea of rites of passage, because there is a difference between boyhood, brotherhood, and manhood.
Is there?
Yeah.
I'm just begging the question. So I mean,
love
as
that
far
word.
as like
You love
brotherhood,
that phrase.
yeah.
Begging the question.
Begging the question. I mean, so I mean,
because you're a curious man, and I like that.
I like to be curious. So I mean, I see obviously a distinction between boyhood and manhood.
Yeah.
And rites of passage are certainly very helpful for making a clean demarcation between those two. However, I guess I'm just wondering about brotherhood is not necessarily being is being entirely, while being masculine is not necessarily something that is distinguished between boyhood or manhood. As being a relationship in between
the
men.
demarcation for me is something my dad brought up, and I bring my dad up a lot. It's because we talk a lot, and I bring up my mom, but the things that we share it's hard to, it's less verbal and more, we're a lot alike, it's a lot of more intuition and magic. But so my dad said there is nothing good that can come from boys hanging out. And at first I repelled against that a little bit. But he said when boys get together, they get together to do mischief if they're alone. And I think he paints with a broad brush. But when men get together, they can often get together to accomplish great things. I think boys can too, but they don't have the same impetus and the same motivation to build. Now they can. When I got together with my buddies, the Stimes, the infamous Stimes, I love those guys. We would get together and we built dams. Of course, we were damming up sewers, so there's always some destruction involved.
Well, but isn't that like practice, right? I mean, for bigger and better things. And I hear your father's concern. I just kind of had to take a trip down memory lane when I was like, I mean, I suppose there were some times that, there might have been some some building or relationship building or good things.
Yeah.
And yes,
Yeah.
when you get boys together, they can get a wee bit mischievous.
Or destructive too.
Or
like
yeah, just
I just remember just
yeah,
chopping
true.
down things, randomly chopping and killing. You know?
Things that they would not necessarily do by themselves, they would
Right.
do in a group. Now, there's
Yeah.
some. I think there might be some truth in there.
And honestly, when men get together, there is the same tendency, and that's why it's important
It's
to
possible,
have.
right? Like
Yeah.
there's nothing scarier than a group of guys.
I mean, you think about college.
Well, and I was going to bring up. I mean, like when I use this term brotherhood,
Mhm.
like it's got some overtones. Like I think within like the men's movement, brotherhood's got maybe some associations coming out of that.
Yeah.
From the Orthodox world, like many monasteries are referred to as a brotherhood. Men's monasteries
Mm.
are referred to as a brotherhood. And these are obviously men that are united and with a particular goal. There
Yeah.
have been in Eastern Christianity, Western Christianity, brotherhoods that have, where men get together for particular purposes. Though when I use this term, it's going to put a spin on it, but it means the same thing: fraternity.
Yeah, it's the same thing. And that's why in colleges it can be the same thing when boys get together. But I think the demarcation, just the second time I use that, but the difference between a fraternity and a men's group, let's say, or a group of men building a house is a rite of passage.
Well,
The fraternity, they never realized, they were never told, you're a man, you have to act like a man now.
well, I mean, now I'll say this: not having ever been a member of fraternity.
I mean, either. So yeah, I'm
So
kind of being.
literally, when I talk about brotherhood or fraternity, they're literally the same thing.
Yeah.
By definition. And there are plenty of people, at least that I'm aware of, like there is a rite of passage generally when one joins a fraternity. Now, it's not a demarcation between boyhood and manhood, but it's an entering into a particular brotherhood. And many of those fraternities, I mean,
A particular club.
fraternity. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and keep to that term. They endure well past after people are out of college, right? I mean, like I'll say
That is true.
The one thing about fraternities that is more than just simply drinking parties and hazing, is the connections that are built that go on not only with the people that were in your fraternity in one place and time, but other people of that fraternity, right? I mean, like that can be a huge network of potential resources and connections. And obviously, we live in a day and age where men in groups have caused lots of problems in the past, and it's something I think we have to take
in the present,
and in the present responsibility for and some accountability for. And it kind of goes back to we'll just say men getting together in groups can either be mischievous, at on the high end of bad, and utterly dangerous on the like extreme end of bad, but they can also be they can also bring about huge world change.
Well, that's another thing my father used to say is he said it all the time. He says there's nothing worse than the idle hand of a young man, because there is so much potential, and they know it. There's so much potential and so much energy and ability, and if it becomes idle, it can become dangerous. And I think that is true in my experience. If without motivation, purpose, and a plan, all that energy and potential can easily slip into, obviously it can, it can it can take a turn for pleasure or Well, a bored young man is dangerous to me. I believe a bored young man I think about it in high school when someone I think a lot about my brother who was super intelligent. Now, he was dangerous, but he never created harm. No. But he was super intelligent, and when he got bored, that was bad for the teacher, and he often got bored because he was so intelligent and capable and I and when I work with young men, I see that a lot. When they get bored, they get dangerous. And I paint with a broad brush as far as danger goes. I'm not
Sure.
saying they're going to hurt somebody,
Or,
but they become
or themselves, right?
Yeah.
Or they become problematic.
Yeah. And I don't and I think the same thing goes for girls. However, it's different. It's very different. There's a physicality. Now, I'm not saying for every boy and every girl, but in general, there is a physicality aspect
Oh,
that
and
my daughters can sit and knit, and my son will start stabbing people with a needle. That's just how it goes.
well, not just the physicality, but just aggressiveness.
Yes, there's an aggressive
I
nature.
mean, just I think
There's
it's
a
one of
little
the
thing called testosterone that they're beginning to experience that the girls will not. It's a different thing.
not certainly not that way, and and guys are certainly not as relational at that younger age.
Or
Generally,
even
again, generally
articulate.
speaking, yeah,
Or intelligent.
yeah. Their emotional intelligence low, aggression high, it's just problematic.
But there is something that is important to me, and I hear you as far as so you and I had the discussion that there's very little there's no biblical support for any kind of rites of passage.
Well, I mean, other than,
from boyhood to manhood, and there's lots of rites of passage. There's baptism, and there is catechism. There is, taking the Eucharist, and others. There's marriage. That's a huge rite of passage, huge. And I think there's room for other things like hunting and fishing and sports that aren't spoken of in the Bible that still are a big part of our society, and we can deal with in a biblical manner.
Say more.
Using my phrase against me. Well, I think that since they are I see them as healthy aspects of our society. Sports, hunting, these things that are a big part of us, especially certain segments of our population and where you live, that are important to culture, but are not necessarily important they're important to the cult of living, but not important to the cult of religion, of Christ, So they are cultured, and maybe, it's like hunting and gathering. That's been something that's been a part of our culture for centuries. Well, since the beginning, obviously.
Yeah, I think that's just part of being human.
But yet it's not.
Or was.
Good point. It's not a part of a large segment of our society's lives, but maybe to the detriment of our society rather than
hunting, gathering, and I would add growing.
What do you mean by growing?
Well, I mean, I grow a garden.
Oh yeah.
Yes. I tend trees and things. And,
your fig trees.
Figs, I got
to see your fig trees.
The figs.
The Chicago Hardy. Is that what they're called?
The Chicago Hardy. Get you some.
Gotta get me some.
Yeah.
So where do those things, is there a place, is there a place for a father saying, you're old enough to own a gun now, son? It's not a biblical rite of passage. It's not a sacrament. It's nothing sacred about it. However, there's something very secular and, in the tamest form of the word, there's something very secular but very important about the transition.
Well, sure. And I think, and this is the hard thing, I guess, for me sometimes, like from a current, like the way things are culturally created at the moment, there is sort of this arbitrary passage called a birthday, right?
Yeah.
And so,
okay.
now, I mean, like now it's not like on a familial level, right? So I mean, it's one thing if like when we went out in the woods, like I still own this little 20 gauge shotgun that I got when I was 9. Now getting it, or however it was for Christmas, I don't know, it was 8 or 9, whatever. Now, I didn't tote that gun around as a kid. Because
not in public, at least.
Because I was a kid. Well, I had a lock on it, which gun locks are good. So, when you have kids, that just getting that for Christmas wasn't necessarily like now now that you have a firearm, you're a man, or like here's a bow and arrow, you're a man, or here's a sword, swinging around, you're a man, or machete, or tools. But so I mean, like acknowledging that within a family, right? But I'm just wondering, like even culturally across the board, it's kind of like, well, once you reach the age of 18, you are considered by our culture as an adult, with most of the rights of adults, minus being able to buy a handgun and consume alcohol. That you have to wait till you're 21. However, you can sign up. You will have to go, if you're a male, to the post office and fill out the little card for selective service. And if you so volunteer, you can carry a machine gun at 18 all over the world, but you can't have a beer.
Strange.
Doesn't quite make sense, but however, that's where we are at culturally as Americans.
That's what happens when an oligarchy of committees instructs a group of people made up of 300 million people.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm going to say it was somebody's bright idea, but the culture at large, at least for the last, I don't know, since the 60s, 70s, has consented to this way of doing things. There's not been any push or movement to change those things. Now, I think amongst veterans, you'll hear kind of the arguments where like, 19-year-olds can, truck a saw, all over Afghanistan, but can't come back and have a beer. That just doesn't.
Well, and they're going to go to Quebec, Canada, and have it at 16. So
whatever. Well, and Europe has got different laws. So I mean,
Europe and Canada,
Europe, same thing.
It's true.
Our European neighbors to the north.
There's a lot of truth to that.
Oh. But you were saying about rites of passage.
No, I was diverging from a real topic of brotherhood. The importance of brotherhood. And I think it has to do with rites of passage, but it doesn't have to. I have the particular experience of being a part in the church. I was introduced by the church to. I wasn't introduced by the Mankind Project, which is a secular, spiritual but secular, worldly group. I was introduced by the New Adam, later to be the Crucible Project, to the idea of intense manhood, rites of passage, but brotherhood. The idea of going on a weekend and experiencing a particular challenge and intimacy. That word, of course, is it has different meanings, but particular like vulnerability, I'll say, between men.
Okay.
In forming a brotherhood. Now, I appreciate it quite a bit, and later on joined the sort of the secular version of the Mankind Project, and provided certain ideas. So it comes down to the idea of providing a new vision of what a man is to young men, and men, well, to men of all ages, but I provided it to young men, falling back on central values of integrity, self-determination, goal setting, respect for womanhood, those kind of things. And then being part of so our church actually instituted this in what we called a triad, but it wasn't. Triad was a misnomer. We would have like 6 people, but we would follow the same rules. So I was very familiar when I joined the other stuff, the Mankind Project. We followed the same rules as we gathered as men every Wednesday night or Monday night, whatever it may be, at the church, and the same rules of taking turns, being open about our emotions, forcing ourselves to find an emotion, checking in, and being vulnerable with each other instead of being bravado, around each other, instead of giving advice, this is what you should do, asking questions, sharing, being vulnerable, being able to open up that space for vulnerability. And later in the Mankind Project, I learned a good analogy was that early in the so ancient tribes discovered that they kept losing war. There's a particular tribe that kept losing, and many of their people were being killed, and they went to the elders and said, what should we do? And they said, you need to form a circle in the morning before you go to battle and share your heart to each other. And they thought that was absurd, but they kept killing, so they kept getting defeated and kept getting killed, so they decided to try it, and they found that they became stronger as a unit of effectiveness as they shared with each other things that they struggled with. They became interconnected. And I think that's something that's hard for us guys, is to be connected and vulnerable to each other. Now, I know it's something that's hard for us. It's hard for us to make circles because we all want to be the point.
Sure. I guess I just wonder, like, in this day and time, and this is maybe me sharing some of my own struggles. I mean, just the amount of intention and space and time, right? I mean, like, space and time sometimes just feels really constricted, and like what making, you're like, well, we get together once a week, and there's part of me, it's like, man, I can't get together with some guys once a week. Where would I find the time to do that? Like once a month?
Well,
once every other week?
Beth Copeland says hi.
What's up,
Hey, Beth. How you doing? Well, here's the thing is that what we would, so what I have brought that up, and what was said to me was, well, what is important to you?
True.
Do you make time for things that are important to you? If it's not important to you, then don't make the time for it. But we believe it is important for you to do this. You will be stronger in every other aspect of your life.
Sure. Yeah, the benefits outweigh
it's the same thing I would say for counseling, Yeah. People make time for an hour of counseling, 2 hours of counseling,
Yeah.
And pay for it. This would be free.
And pay for it.
Yeah. which is time. Time's money. Quick is funny. I learned that from Darkwing Duck.
Time is money.
Jim Lung says, "Yo,
what's up, Jim?
Yo, what's up, Mr. Lung? How you doing tonight?" But it seems like you have some reservations about this idea of brotherhood.
Well, so I don't necessarily have reservations. I think it's more of like, for me at this point, an exploration, because I've got friends, right, that are guys, and they're brothers. I mean, you're in that category. You're brother Jude. But I'm getting older.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's a part of me that wonders, some of this longing to have, I guess, a broader group of brothers to be able to not only encourage but be encouraged by, right? I mean, to challenge and be challenged by, to support and be supported by. Maybe the brothers in my life, the handful of people that are really close friends, brothers, like there's a broader circle, that has up to this juncture in my life just lacked like the catalyst, or the intentionality, the structure, to kind of
the
bring
consistency, right,
and some consistency, right? And that's and you're correct. I think, as I'm saying it, like there's this little bit of resistance to, like, man, y'all did what? Once a week? Like every week? Like that's a significant commitment.
And that's another thing, that men hate commitment. They hate it.
I'm okay. I'm okay with some commitment.
But
every week.
But yeah,
at night, like I could see something crazy, like let's all get together at 6 o'clock in the morning. While the world is sleeping.
There are groups that meet during that time. That is not my bag, but
because for me, it's like, and I hear it like. Is the cost worth the benefit? Like, am I going to be a better father? Am I going to be a better husband? Am I going to be a better man in the world by taking an hour or two once a week and spending in a circle with the brothers? And I think for me, part of maybe my resistance is just not having experienced that.
That could be, yeah. And you know what? You want to know the truth? The big hypocrisy in my life is I am a huge proponent of it, but I have the hardest time committing to it.
Yeah.
I'm not part of one right now. And part of it is because I know how loyal I am. I'm like, personality qualities, I'm a quite loyal person. And so I'm very wary of what I commit to, because I know that I will stick to it. Or no, I know that if I don't stick to it, I will punish myself, And I probably won't always stick to it.
There'll be much self-flagellation for falling short.
I just noticed I still have the Chicken Foot podcast.
You're right. There does have a little chicken up there, doesn't it?
I took that out. That's my other podcast. So the thing is, I think that so we would do it in bursts, right? It's not like for the rest of your life. It's there's a year commitment, and after that year, you reevaluate, make another year commit, and you get 4. So one year we did, you get 4 just unexcused absences, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And most of us stuck to it, but it's funny because the leader of it, the pastor, was the worst. I had to be, I had an engagement. I had to speak before, Like, okay,
the honcho was pulling the pass card.
But it's based on submitting to commitments. I'm committed to speaking I statements. I'm committed to ask questions and not give advice. And it's amazing, dude. Since we started, I find myself I have to correct myself all the time. I talk about you. You know how and you, and and of course I'm not talking about you, but I'm talking about the royal you, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
just dispersing the responsibility amongst the whole world. But when I make it, see, when I make it personal to say I, then it becomes more powerful. I find that when I speak in I statements, it's a much more powerful statement. Saying when you say I statements, it's not as powerful, is much different and much less poignant than saying when I use I statements, I feel much more powerful. That is undeniable one thing, because you don't know how I feel,
Sure.
you know how you feel. And so if I'm saying you have a argument against that,
Yeah.
so
Well, and it's certainly self-revelatory, right? I mean, I think it's sort of the
yeah,
beauty of I statements.
vulnerability.
I'm revealing who I am. I'm not
Mhm.
making some allegation or indictment of someone else. You.
Mhm. Mhm.
Of course, you can kind of mix it up, like Judah. When you talk about I statements, I feel excited.
That is true, but I'm talking
Um,
about platitudes. I
yeah,
often will
yeah,
get into platitudinal speech, and
sure,
especially
yeah.
in this. See, but even that, we will get an like, no, I get in platitudinal speech when in political, when the political temperature is high. But Brotherhood, I think there's something beyond all the men's work type stuff. Let's just take it to a general stance. What have you experienced from Brotherhood that made you want to talk about it?
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I mean, I've got people in my life. I've got a couple of buddies here. That I've really developed some deep friendships with since I've been living in Southwest Virginia, Northeast Tennessee, last 18 years. Um, so just a throw my wife a little laurel. She's been kind enough to be married to me for 17 years as of Sunday, so that was
Wow,
nice.
congratulations,
Yeah,
brother.
yeah. So I mean,
Nice.
but one of the things I've learned from so she can't hear that, but it's now preserved for posterity for all time that it's on video. Exactly what I was saying. Like, you know, you, you can support and be supported. You can encourage and be encouraged. You can challenge and be challenged.
Who can be
Um,
challenged?
Between brothers, right? You know. So I mean, that's something that I've gotten from my friends.
Mhm.
But as you'll probably maybe you've had this kind of experience. My experience has been like even between different friends, the kind of encouragement is different, right? The kind of support is different. The
Yeah.
kind of challenge is different.
Yeah.
What you learn is different. So the broader that circle gets, it just expands, right? Like
Yeah.
the kind of support expands, the kind of encouragement expands, the kind of challenge expands. So the more diverse it is, the more I'm just going to say the more powerful it becomes.
Yeah.
At least it's been in my experience. Just
I agree.
a little bit in groups. Like I don't do a lot of stuff with groups, so it's an area in my life that I'm like, I just feel like that would be really good for me and good for other men.
Yeah.
And just we live in an age where if there was a time to be it's just awkward being a man right now.
It is.
There's no way around it. It's awkward.
Well, it's and that's intentional, I believe.
It,
There's an intentional well, for good or for bad. I won't say it's necessarily bad, but there's an intentional rebalancing of things where people have made it awkward to be, especially an adult male.
it,
Oh,
well,
by the way, Scott, Scott says,
Brother Scott.
congratulations, Joshua.
Well, thank you,
He
Brother
just
Scott.
celebrated his 20. Him and his wife just celebrated the 22nd.
Ooh, busting the curve. Congratulations, Scott. I'm not sure if you
Congratulations, man.
caught our episode last week where I got kicked off of Facebook. So I may have noticed that and would have said something like congratulations, but they gave me the boot.
Somebody left a message for you too, and I forgot to respond to them.
Oh, really?
Josh is not. Yeah, on the video. I gotta go back and I think it was Jim, and I gotta say Josh isn't on. You know, what would be a good way to contact you?
That's a good question.
So, was that Facebook that I friended? That wasn't you,
no,
David.
So that actually is you somehow or another found my alter ego on Facebook, but it's one of those things that I accidentally activated that really old account, and
yeah.
So like all of my contacts and all that stuff is gone the way of the earth, I suppose, unless I'm released from Facebook jail.
I thought there's no way that this is not Joshua Blackburn. His father's, I think your dad's name is David, or your middle name.
It's my middle name. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah. David Blackburn that went to Dakota that has an Eastern Orthodox like John.
Well, that's actually St. David of Wales, the icon there on
that makes sense. David, yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought there's no way that's not Josh.
And it's been kind of handy because normally I just, use Facebook for intelligence purposes where I'm like, oh, this person applied for a job. I want to see, what kind of craziness they post or don't post. Or can I find them at all?
So, excursus aside.
Excursus aside, how do you get in contact with me?
Yeah. David, go to David Blackburn. You'll see the Saint David of
Wales.
Of Wales. Okay.
Yeah. The Celtic saint.
But let's talk deeply about this.
Yeah. So like Brotherhood, what is it? Why do you need it?
Brotherhood. Should we exclude women in this brotherhood? And why, if so? And why not, if not?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to like, what is it?
Yeah.
Is it okay for there to be all female organizations or fellowships? And I think, with any organization, it's okay to exclude in the sense that, the goal is to focus what's going on. And that's what I'm going back to. Like, it's awkward to be a man in 2020 because I think that's one of the things that I think I look forward to the possibility is just being able to wrestle with those issues with other men who are living different lives than mine. And so they're seeing different facets of life than I'm seeing, different lived experiences. So I mean, why should we? Yeah, no, it's the He-Man Woman Haters Club, and no girls allowed, man. Jim says yes. Well, of course, Jim. It's an easy answer.
I'd love your permission to share. I love that email you sent. If you could give me permission to share, I'd like to.
We just want to work on ourselves as guys.
But yeah. I mean, it's not just the He-Man Women's Hater Club. It's the fact that we are different, and there are those that believe we are not different. I don't know what world they're living in, but we are different, and we have different.
I'm not a fan of science deniers, and I'm just going to stop there.
What?
It's just biology, brother.
I'm really surprised by the people that called me a science denier when I was against masks, but they were against gender. How's that work?
Well, I mean, I'm not talking about gender. I'm talking about sex.
Well, the funny thing is, I've not had to, what I've experienced was the very clear difference in our legal system is I have in-laws and family members that have experienced the difference, when a baby out of wedlock does not produce the same effect for both a man and a woman.
It does not. Yeah, mother's got utter and total rights in most states to that child until a court declares the father the father.
Well, on top of that, there is financial responsibility of the father that what? If everybody's the same, how does that work?
It just depends on the state now. Yeah, it's yeah.
So, but
Anyway,
to get back to Brotherhood,
that sounds like gender.
yeah. So, well, to get back to Brotherhood, I think that there's I've seen the older generation in my family in need of a brotherhood, in need of a surrounding group of like-minded men, and something more than a Bible study. I'll say that.
Well,
A Bible study is different.
Sure, yeah. I don't want to get together with guys and study the Bible. I can do that all by myself.
Yeah.
But what I can't get again is this clash of someone else's, in particular, another man's lived experience.
Yeah.
And I can't get, like, in that group context, especially if you're talking about people that are and men that are willing to be vulnerable, they're willing to be honest, and they're willing to give, then you're going to get feedback, right? You're going to get like, man, when you say that, you come across, what I feel is you come across as blah, 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 blah. And now you've got an opportunity to see yourself in a light that you can't get anywhere else. It's very difficult to get that kind of honest feedback because most of the time somebody's got an axe to grind, or they're afraid to hurt your feelings, whatever. You're not in a context to get that.
Right. Or
and that's huge.
Or they are. It's much more beneficial to be on your good side, right? Like if I have certain influence over somebody, and in every relationship we have a certain influence, right? Like if I bring up something negative about you, then maybe our relationship won't be based on it won't be so transactional, right?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I won't be able to come over and use your TV or something, something like that.
And I'll just put it this way: honest feedback is priceless, and it's hard to find venues, places where you can get it. You can pay for it, and even then, you might not get it.
It's kind of hit or miss, right?
It's hit or miss. It's hit or miss.
Sometimes if you get, an incompatible counselor, it's just like you can work through it for a while, and then you say, it's just not working out.
Because counselors are people too.
Yeah.
And they struggle with being honest.
Yeah.
And be like,
and vulnerable.
And
that's the thing. You can't get vulnerability from a counselor. You can't, right?
Well, I think you can. I think you can. I think good counseling, you can. A good counselor should be able to bring up what's going on in the room. Like, hey, I really noticed that, like, when you talk about whatever, I really feel like we're not jiving, or I feel like you don't really care about what's going on here.
That's true. In the here and now. But you won't ever get a counselor saying, man, I feel you. Like, I'm really having a hard time with my wife right now, or my husband right
Correct. Now. You're not, you're probably not.
There's no, get that. Your work is my work. There's no, your work is my work.
Right? You'll get hints of that, but generally you're never going to get that level of self-disclosure which is something that you find only in groups. where it universalizes and generalizes someone else's experience, where it's like, oh, I'm not the only person with that problem. I'm not the only person with that experience. This
Yeah.
is actually pretty normal. I'm not alone in
Yeah.
this.
That was the biggest thing I learned from both schooling in counseling and from training for groups, and particularly these men's groups, is the power of saying, when somebody says, I feel like a failure after, losing my job, someone saying, wait, how many people here have felt like a failure before in their life? And everybody's like, or most people are, raise your hand. Everybody
A
raises.
large majority of the room is like, yeah, I felt like a failure. Yeah. How many people here, whether through fault of themselves or not, have ever lost their job?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm not alone.
I'm not alone. I'm not alone.
Yeah.
And that's huge, right? Normalizing is huge. Like, oh, I'm not alone in this. It's good to know I'm not that special.
I remember in one group in particular, in one trad I was in, I was just confessing, and this is nothing, protected or whatever, but I was just confessing that I just felt like a loser and I didn't know where to go. I didn't have a good job. I was, just recently married. And I remember, just a dear man in the church, he stopped me, and he didn't stop me. He let me talk about it and said, "Can I speak into your life? I was there when I was 27, exactly where you are, and felt the exact same way. And I know exactly how you feel." And this was somebody who was like he was super successful, had his own business and everything. And he said, and he didn't say exactly, right? Because he said,
Sure.
I think I know what you feel. I was
Yeah.
feeling the same things you're saying, I was saying. And I want to tell you that you're not alone, and that I felt that as well. And to hear him say that just relieved me so much, because here's the successful guy. Now, he also went on to say that, he said, like, I went on to find success, and I haven't found that success yet, but
he forgot to give you the magic recipe.
But that's the thing, is he had no advice. He didn't say, this is what you need to do.
Sure.
He just said,
sure.
I'm with you, brother.
Yeah.
And that was enough.
And that was enough in the
Let me
moment.
be who I am,
Yeah.
and still experience comfort, to get through that week and be successful that week, be successful in who I am, not be successful. Because that's the thing about his advice. This is what I would do,
what you should do is, as opposed to like, you're not alone in that feeling. Now go be Judah.
Yeah.
Go
I
be
think
Judah.
it's okay to say this is what I did. It may or may not help,
Sure. Yeah.
But before that is really important to get to the bottom. Let the person, that's why we always made a rule. There's at least 4 questions before we make any kind of, well, this is what I did statements. And I miss that. I miss that more than anything in my church and in my job that I used to have. Having men sitting in a circle with men and just saying blah 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 blah. This is what I'm going through, and people just saying, "Hear you, man," instead of, well, you know what you need to do.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
So it's a topic. It's a topic I've been thinking about lately. I know it's one that is near and dear to your heart.
Why have you been talking about? Why have you been? I'm sorry, thinking about it so much lately.
I don't know. I think part of it's recognizing a need.
Yeah.
Not just only within myself, but I think just a need in general,
Mm.
um, amongst men, and yeah, and I think for me sometimes you get stuck in the what's going on in daily life where it's a real struggle to be transparent and looking for a place or looking for again maybe I like the word venue because it's a place and like the people that are there where
Mm.
you can practice transparency.
Where I can practice transparency?
Well, where I can, where I have to deal with a lot of different people, and sometimes maybe I'm not the most transparent. I try to be. Um, I try to be, but
It's
in the
got to
fun,
be hard though. As somebody who's over counselors, and there's such a, it's so taboo to put your stuff on other people.
well, sure, yeah, and I mean that's certainly a part of that too. Like having, part of it's developmental. Like I'd like to, iron sharpen iron,
Mhm.
and I like to sharpen iron with the guys that I sharpen iron with. But I recognize that it would be nice to have more iron around, different
Yeah,
different tempers, different qualities. Um,
yeah,
the more the merrier. Um,
right.
so yeah, I mean, it's just been growing on me a little bit, and I think
Mm.
I'm finally getting closer to a place where it's like, yeah, I'm gonna stop thinking about it, and I'm gonna start doing something.
Amen,
I
brother.
don't, I
I love
don't,
that.
I don't know what that's gonna be,
Yeah.
but I'm thinking about it.
Well, of course,
I've
COVID has really put a damper on that.
Yeah, COVID puts a little bit of a twist on it. Um, though I'm, like I've got my buddy and I've got two close friends that we probably are all. I've got them on like maybe like a 4 week cycle, 4 to 6 week cycle. We go about 4 to 6 weeks, and it's like, man, we need to go hang out on a back porch, and that's been good, But like, we've already got next Friday. I have to look on my phone. Like next Friday set up. We got two other brothers coming in, into the circle. So it's already expanding a little bit informally.
All
Um,
right.
but there's a part of me that's like, this is. I want to make this a little bit more intentional. Because like
Mm.
that's the thing. Like I know a lot of guys
Yeah.
that like if they went online and checked out Mankind Project, they'd be like, nah, ain't for me. But I think if there was something a little bit more dialed back, yeah, a little bit more dialed back, like
Yeah.
it could be for them. Now that structure and like the rules that you were talking about, like those are key. Those are
Yeah.
key for building
Really are.
safety. Those are key for development.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's kind of the place where I'm at. Where I'm like, I want to kind of see, brotherhood grow, and what does that look like? What is it? Like what do we got to do to make that happen?
What do we got to do to
And
make it happen? We have
yeah.
a comment. The famous
Oh my
Marilee Brad.
goodness, it's Marilee.
So Marilee was a big part of our lives. You were there freshman year. She's a big part of my college life, and yours too.
Okay,
And in
Marilee,
Toccoa, and
it's
she
been a
says
while since I've read your blog, but I love
it's
it.
so good. Can I just say, she says that I just did not anticipate living in a world where I would be giving my seventh baby a bottle
You're
and
my
listening
hero,
to you
Marilee.
gentlemen discuss manhood. I really like this world. I just did not anticipate it. You guys are great, and I love to hear your
Yeah,
thoughts
you and
in this
Bradley
stage of
are heroes.
life. Yes. Well, Marilee, I'm sure you never anticipated much of
No,
what you're experiencing today.
that's
It's a
true.
quite unique life, and we love you for it, and we admire you for it. And thank you for tuning in. We should have Marilee on sometime, get her perspective. And
Yes.
and Brian, man, I remember Brian. Well, both of them were big parts of my experience in college. And to wrap things up, we've got 6 minutes left. I mean, you've already talked about what you want to do. What do we commit to? What do we commit to in these last 6 minutes? What have we just been talking for nothing, or
Sure.
what do we get out of this? How do we move forward?
Yeah.
And how do we move forward in a way that is bolstered by the truth of Scripture? Because like you, I don't want to do something that's like, hocus pocus and not part of tradition or Scripture.
And I think that's sort of the challenge for a lot of men when, and even for myself, like when I encounter, the Mankind Project, and some other men's work like that. I kind of it's weird. There are aspects of it that I think are hugely useful, and then there are other aspects of it that I'm like, I don't know. It just seems a bit hokey. It's got a little bit too much woo woo for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I hear from you is like the question is, what's next? What's next? And and in honesty, for me, I don't know. I'm still kind of thinking. I'm easing out of like I'm thinking about this to I'm thinking about this, and the next thing is what's next. And I'm trying to find people that have at least made stabs. And this is one thing I think I will say about this, about Brotherhood, men's groups, just men's work in general. In the last 220, so we have 40 years. At least from my vague historical understanding.
My whole life.
My whole life since 1980, maybe even since the 70s. None of the men's pushes, secular, sacred, or otherwise, have had any real longevity to them. Like they kind of like they go big. And then it's like whatever happened to ...
Yeah.
So, there's a part of me. It's like, well, my ambitions are much smaller.
And I think but that's good. I think whatever you can get, and it's okay. And I think that's one of the things I experienced first. The first time I ever experienced it was in a men's group when, in one of these Mankind men's group where I said, I don't know, or maybe I'm not ready to say. Yeah. And they said, thank you for sharing. That's perfectly okay. What? You're not going to force me?
We're going to put you. First rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. Second rule of Fight Club is don't talk about Fight Club. Third rule of Fight Club is if it's your first night at Fight Club, you've got to fight. That's what I'm talking about. So,
well, Scott brings up a good question. He says, what about the idea of developing a level of brotherhood with your father?
Sure.
Or as in my case, looking for brotherhood when you've never had a good relationship with your father.
Scott,
I think
we could talk about that next week.
Well, there's a big difference between brotherhood and fatherhood. Like, okay. I don't know that the level of brotherhood can be the same with your father. There will always be a dynamic there.
There's a power dynamic. There's an attachment dynamic.
I developed a whole career, tiny career, a little career, based on the fact that young men do not. They need an outside voice outside of their father and mother to support their father and mother. Not that their mother and father are not a good authority, but that they need something in the same way that a father provides an outside source of reinforcement for the mother. Oh, there's somebody else? Then I think there is also a male adult or female adult, depending on what the person needs, that is important to say, oh,
sure,
there's other adults that believe this, outside of the
Yeah.
and then brotherhood, I think that's something else. I don't think that it's good to develop a brotherhood with your father. Now that's my experience. There is a kinship and there is a mentorship that is extremely important. But a brotherhood, I do not see that. And that's interesting that you thought that you said that, because I was thinking, as I live with my father and I want to develop something to here, would I include my father in one of those groups? I think it would be strange for him. I think it'd be, there's a level of
yeah, I guess I'm wondering, I'm looking at it like in my mind as roles, right? Like I have a role as a father, I have a role as a brother. Is there a place for those to overlap? I'm tracking with you, but I'm just, again, I want to beg the question. Is there a place for that to overlap?
However, I think there are certain roles that may be destroyed. Now, if you don't have that role, it's not established, because he also said, what about with somebody who you've never had a good relationship with? I think, though, that there are certain roles and lines of demarcation, and this is why, lines of, I don't think, I'm thinking with my own son, I think I would introduce him to the brotherhood, but I'd want him to have his own brotherhood. I wouldn't want, and for my daughters, I want them to have their own sisterhood outside of my wife and I, in order for them to share things that are, that share pain that shouldn't be really heard, by the father or mother.
Shouldn't?
Yeah. Well, okay. You hate that word, should.
Some days. I mean, most of the time, yes. It just depends on, there's certain shoulds that are pretty inviolate. So, like, you shouldn't kill people.
That I think violate a certain relationship. That the information warps the relationship.
How so? I don't know how much time we have, because I don't want to press that one too hard.
Got as much time as we need. Well, let's see.
Maybe Scott we can take this one up tomorrow.
I think a void of the former, a father figure, can create a greater hunger for the latter. Yes. Absolutely.
And there's a bunch of literature out there.
Absolutely. I don't know how to express, like, when I was working with young men that didn't have any fathers, or even working with young men who had father figures that were not very involved in their lives, the hunger and the need for validation, a validation of their pain, which was interesting to me. I never thought of, right? Like, I thought I was going to be validating their successes, but really what they wanted was validation of their pain. And that touched me. It still does to this day. Like, wow. Yeah. But I think that could be. Oh, and Jim Lung says, how about a joint study of 12 rules left? Okay. I do want to say, Jim, I am a huge proponent of Jordan B. Peterson, and I dare I say I try not to worship at the altar of Jordan B. Peterson. It's funny when I quote, I've had to come to the place where now I say, I knew a teacher who once said, because I've quoted Jordan B. Peterson so much, I don't want people to think, is this the only guy you quote?
Yeah. I'm his disciple. I'm a disciple of
What he
Dr.
said.
Peterson.
I love him and get so much out of him. Forgiveness of the destructive absent parent is absolutely necessary, and I agree. I agree. There's a certain forgiveness, but I also learned in group you don't say but, because but negates what you just said. That's what I don't know if I agree with that, but it's
It's a
and
relatively important bit of grammar and
yeah,
communication. Yeah.
it's true.
You got to be very careful about how you use but. It's
Yeah,
much more effective to use and.
and
I love you. And when you do that,
yeah,
it drives me crazy, as opposed to I love you, but.
yeah. I will say forgiveness of the destructive and the expression of it. You know, forgiveness I think is very important, and being able to say that freaking hurt me, and maybe not use the word freaking, you know, maybe say, you know, expressing it in real terms, how the pain, and admitting. I think admission can be very important to healing. Admission of it. What do you think, Josh?
Well, yeah, it's always good to just be honest, right? And
Well,
to
but
admit and to confess and
honesty.
well, I mean, but what's the opposite, right? Like to withhold,
Yeah, that's true. Is
you
it
know,
is
to avoid,
hide? Is it, yeah, is
to
it dishonest?
hide, right? I mean, it's
Maybe.
not necessarily dishonest, but it's also not off. You know,
Yeah.
mm, it. So yeah, it's not a lie in the sense of I told you something false,
Right.
but I also didn't tell you the truth.
That's true. Jim says, sorry, I mentioned Peterson. No,
It's okay, Jim.
apologize.
He's right here, so it's cool. I got him right in my little bookshelf right
Where's
here.
mine? I want to
Funny
pull
how.
mine out. I can't believe you just did that. Showed me up. He also says, agree. Admitting the pain is important. Forgiveness
It
is
is.
giving up the right to see the offender the way you hurt the way you have. Oh, I think that's good. That's good. It takes the power away from the pain. So I do want to say, Jim, you can mention, please quote Jordan Peterson as much as you want. I love Jordan Peterson, and too much. Too much. That's why I said it.
It's okay. He
I need to
sits.
expand outside of. That's why I talked to Josh. I need more.
Yeah,
Read
I
some Lightheart and read some.
I balance
Jim,
JP with other people, so it's cool.
I still haven't read that other book that Jim talked about last time. You and Jim said were really good.
Oh, Griffiths, Paul
Yeah,
Griffiths.
Griffiths. I don't know what this means. Lex,
Oh, the Law of the Claw.
Law of the Claw.
Yeah, Lex Talionis. Eye for an eye, tooth for tooth.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, leaves
Oh,
everybody
blind.
everybody blind and toothless.
This has been fun. We've had a lot of great interaction. Should we? I think we should talk next week about what was it you said? It'd be a good discussion itself.
Well, Scott's question about, I mean, fathers. I mean, yeah, think of the void father figure. You know, this topic of you're like,
Wait,
I don't know if I'd want to cross those boundaries, right? Like, like crossing or mixing up the roles between father and brother.
Yeah.
And, that is a ooh, you want to talk about an interesting topic. Yeah, because you've got this power differential, you've got this aspect of loving some JP, the attachment issues, like, oh, there's all kinds of goodies in there.
And I have heard of men being, bringing their fathers to, into the circle and it being good. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm
yeah,
just saying
yeah.
it's tricky. It's tricky.
I also could see where it could be tricky, depending upon the son, depending upon the father. I could definitely see that being, shall we say, challenging.
Challenging. And challenging.
I'm not going to say problematic.
We're
I'm going to say challenging.
I like that because we are not allergic to challenges here.
No,
We don't
no.
like problems. But
Well, I'm okay with some problems, but but challenging just sounds more hopeful.
yeah, exactly.
At least with problems, there's possible solutions.
I'm just taking a look here. We've got oh man, we've had likes from some interaction here. Likes, thumbs ups from Jim Pass, from Jim Pickett. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Jim.
Scott, thank you, Scott Pinu, and Beth, and of course we had Jim Lung and Jim Pass in the comments. Marilee, thanks
And the
for
one and only Marilee Bradley.
us. Yes, say hi to the fam. And who else? Did I miss anybody? We had at the beginning we had Beth Copeland.
Mhm.
Just a great conversation. Next week we're going to talk deeper into I will say not necessarily the father, but we'll generalize it to the parental disparity.
We'll have to narrow down that topic a little bit.
Yeah, let's dig in and focus next week, if it is next week.
We'll get a little Oedipal.
What?
Yeah, I just said Oedipal just for fun. A little Freudian. Little Freudian reference for you there. Well, we will not be getting Oedipal next week.
Oh, what? If we need to, we can go there. We can go anywhere. Not a show. You know why? Because this is not a show.
Because it's not a show.
Conversation. And so once again, thank you guys for joining us. If you want to join us next time, but we're just having a good time talking to each other and you when you participate, or give us a like, leave a comment. Even if you're listening to this not live, leave a comment. It just goes to my Facebook or YouTube. I'll see it. Josh won't see it on Facebook unless you friend him, unless you friend David Blackburn with the little icon. Hard to miss. David of Bath, right?
Wales. Bath. You're so close. So close. Bath is not far from Wales.
I know. I've been to
both.
You know what? That's funny because when I visited Scotland, Ireland, London, and Ireland, England, and Wales. Bath was that was our next destination after Wales, and it was more memorable because it had a big green bath.
Built Roman baths, yeah.
Good night, everybody. Have a wonderful week.
That'll be good.